Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Basil Smikle, and I am a professor of practice and director of the nonprofit management program here at Columbia University in the School of Professional Studies. It's a pleasure to welcome all of you to our monthly leadership webinar. Today, we are really excited to have Rebecca Smith, who is Director of Philanthropy for the Salvation Army of Greater New York. And maybe just as important as that, she is an alum of the program and is it 2016, I believe. Rebecca has been wonderful in sharing her time with all of us this afternoon to talk about her work and maybe some insights on the future of the current situation and the future of the sector. But before we get into that, one of the big announcements that I'd like to make and share with all of you is for our upcoming symposium. Many of you may remember that we did one last year right after the election, where we organized a bit of a town hall for nonprofits. And given the work that we do in the sector and the way that we think about thought leadership in the sector, we thought it'd be a great idea to continue that conversation. So on November 20th, in the Lee Bollinger Forum, which is at Columbia's newer campus on 125th and Broadway, we're hosting a nonprofit symposium titled At the Crossroads, Nonprofits Shaping Health Policy in Times of Structural Challenge. So yes, this particular conversation, which will start at 8 a.m., run till about 12, will involve healthcare policy and public health policy. And we are excited to have a number of individuals. The Clinton Foundation will be represented, the former Commissioner of Health and Mental Hygiene here in the city of New York will be with us, and a number of other advocates, nonprofit leaders to join the conversation. But more importantly, we'd love for you to join the conversation. Many panels and conversations will take place, a number of networking opportunities. And yes, we will have food, breakfast for you. So that may be for a lot of us the best part. One of the best parts of coming uptown to see us. So yes, November 20th, please mark the calendar. We look forward to seeing you there. So once again, my name is Basil Smikle, Professor of Practice and Director of the Master's Program in Nonprofit Management. Thank you again for being with us. Because our guest today is a 2016 alum of our program, I thought it would be incredibly fitting that instead of hearing from me today, you'd hear from another alum of the program, the Deputy Director of Nonprofit Management, a great alum of the program, Lonnie Ryan. So I will leave it to Ronnie to take it from here. And again, thank you all for being with us. And also Deanna Bozelman, who's with us as well. And Lonnie, you could speak more about Deanna, but she is, I love seeing her wherever we do events, and I love seeing her walk into the room because I know there's a wealth of knowledge and experience coming in to teach me how to do things. So thank you, Deanna, for joining us. Great to see you. But again, Lonnie, please take it away. And again, thanks everybody for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Basil. I love these conversations because we really get to hear from people who are leading in the field. And I really, I'm going to hand this over to Deanna just to do a quick introduction of Rebecca. We're all alum of the program. We went through at different times. And Deanna is one of those people that if you come to Columbia and you come to the MS and Nonprofit Management program, you will know Deanna, whether she's your associate instructor or the person that we say, oh, you're looking for an internship in an organization, talk to Deanna. She is one of the best kind of connectors and so plugged into the nonprofit community here in New York. But I'll let her do a quick intro of Rebecca, and then Rebecca, let's get down to all the great questions. I know, as we mentioned before, this is being recorded, so we'll share a recording afterward. If you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A function at the bottom and put your questions in there, and we'll answer them as we get to them. But Deanna, take us away.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Lonnie. And It's an honor for me to connect. One of my own classmates from our cohort is and my dear friend Rebecca Smith. We graduated in 2016. Um, Rebecca, when she came to this program, her background and her passion was a therapist, and she really cared about supporting mental health initiatives. She's got her master's in psychology, a master's social work at NYU, or a degree in psychology, and then she went on to work for CCS. Look at her now. She's the director of philanthropy of Greater New York for the Salvation Army, and she has a team of over 20. And I'm just so glad to introduce her to everyone that is here today.
Thank
you, Deanna.
Thank you so much. And this kind of alumni network, we're over 900 alum of the program, and exactly what you'd want to see, kind of this kind of collaborative, whatever year you graduated, you're part of the community, and it's job sharing, it's information sharing, it's networking, it's all those things. But Rebecca, let's jump right in. So Deanna kind of teased a little bit about your career path, which was not a straight path into nonprofit development fundraising. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you. It was a winding path, but one that was purposeful. I started out my career, as Deanna said, with a bachelor's in psychology. I went on and got my master's in clinical social work at NYU, and I became a licensed therapist. And over the course of several years, I worked in a variety of settings, from inpatient psychiatry to like psychiatric urgent care, residential treatment. And my last position was in a day treatment center for people who were considered permanently disabled by their severe mental illness. And I was there for a few years. And it was during that time that I kind of saw how the system was flawed. Our billing, because our patients were considered disabled, all of our funding was Medicaid and Medicare. We billed for our services. There was no fundraising, and it simply wasn't enough to provide really adequate care for our patients. I was being asked to cut my sessions short to do more billing paperwork when a colleague left. Their caseload of donors, been in fundraising for too long now. Our caseload of patients was distributed among us other therapists. So our caseloads were too high, and there just wasn't the resources that we needed to really provide the care. So it was a stressful environment and a stressful time. But personally, at that same time, I had a roommate who introduced me, who set me up with a guy in finance. And his company had purchased a table at the Metropolitan Museum of Art's Spring Acquisition Gala. And I had absolutely no idea what that was. But he asked me to be his +1. And the only scale I had for this was something I'd seen in the movies. I didn't know what to wear. I didn't know how to act. I did not know what to expect. I hadn't grown up in a place where there was a lot of philanthropy, and definitely not at the scale that we see in New York City. So I went on the day of the event from that clinic where I was working with people who were, formerly homeless, really struggling, straight to go change into this ball gown and over to the Met for this amazing evening where I was totally in awe and so overwhelmed. But you fake it till you make it. I was acting like I belonged there, and I remember sitting down, we were eating dinner, and then over dessert, they put up a slide with a piece of art that they wanted to purchase. That's the acquisitions. And they started doing, a call for donations. And people were just throwing their hands up in the air, pledging, $1 million, $500,000. And I sat there in awe. And all I could think was that just one of those donations could change the life of my patients. They could just completely change our clinic. And I remember just leaning over the table and asking my date, like, what is that job? How do I get that job to get that money so that I can help my clients? And he was like, I think it's a fundraiser. And in my mind that night, I had changed careers. I was already switching my job right then and there. I went home and I started Googling, trying to figure out what a fundraiser was. How could I be a fundraiser? And immediately brushed up my resume and started applying. And I applied for probably almost a year before I finally gave up because absolutely nobody wanted to hire a psychotherapist to be a fundraiser. And, I fell back on, I didn't really know what to do at that time, but I was still determined to get into fundraising. And so I was looking in and I found Columbia's program and I applied for that. I started in the spring semester of 2013, I think. And as soon as I got that application or the acceptance letter, I walked up to my boss's office and put in my resignation notice. I was like, I'm going to be a fundraiser. Didn't turn out so easy. The career change was still hard, even after I went to Columbia, but I was so lucky that I got paired with an advisor, Robin Rosenbluth. I think she's still there. And she was able to connect me to my very first fundraising job, where I was the executive assistant to the director of development at a nonprofit. And from there, I was able to really take off. As soon as I graduated, yet another colleague, another classmate of the program, introduced me to CCS, helped me with my application, and helped me, and eventually started at CCS. And from there, I was there for years, and it was my last client at CCS. It was the Salvation Army. I was brought in for interim leadership, the position that I'm in now. And it was such an amazing fit that when our contract was up, I didn't want to leave. And so I didn't. I stayed, and I'm still there 5 years later.
It's such a great story because it illustrates how so many people don't have a straight career path, and they find their way to this mission-based work and to fundraising and development, which is fascinating. So you mentioned kind of you came to the program because you weren't getting jobs without kind of some skills. So can you talk about kind of the skills that you got at the program or that you really needed to make that career shift, and that things that were really helpful for you when you decided to become a full-time fundraiser?
Yeah. I think the classes that were most important in my career now was probably one that was plan giving. And I'm not in plan giving, but I manage a plan giving team. And so without that experience, I would not be able to do that. And that's something that you can't really learn in the field. I think those are the courses that are most helpful, or things that you can't just go learn in the field. A lot of things you can train. You can get a job and you can learn it. I think another one was actually I came back as an associate instructor and innovations in philanthropy. And that was another class. And I was the associate instructor, but I was learning so much. I think there's really things like that set Columbia grads kind of above just the general job seeker and the fundraising field. But I think beyond the classwork, it was really the connections that I had made and the network. As I said, it was one of the instructors that got me my very first job in fundraising. And then it was friends that I made along the way that helped me get these other jobs. And I think still to this day, my classmates from that program are some of my closest friends and people who I call up when I need advice.
Yeah. And you've taken the shift. Now you're the person that we're calling when we have students who want jobs, because you're hiring them and you're giving them internships, which is amazing. And I definitely want to get to that. But what I really want to talk about before that is, what does a day in your life look like? What is your role as the chief or director of philanthropy? What does that look like at the Salvation Army of Greater New York?
Yeah, it's interesting because the Salvation Army is a very unique organization. Many people don't know that we are a faith-based organization. We were founded by a Methodist minister. And we are, to this day, the largest provider of social services in the United States. So just in New York City, you know, my region covers New York City, Long Island, the Hudson Valley. We have in the city 19 churches and community centers that really serve over 10 million meals a year for people who are homeless, for families who are struggling and can't buy groceries. They provide free childcare. They provide free after-school programming, really things that are anti-poverty services and help keep people just day to day, help them keep going, the bare necessities that people can't always afford to get. And so I am working with my team. I have a team of 20 people who are responsible for all of the fundraising across the entire region. And so as management, I am with them kind of in meetings all day long, or I'm out in the field, I'm getting information, I'm learning what the needs are, I'm learning how, right now the government shutdown is going to impact people's benefits. People are not going to be getting their food benefits that they need next month. So right now I'm trying to figure out how we're going to raise money to keep our soup kitchens and our food pantries fully stocked when people suddenly can't go to the grocery store. So I'm creating that strategy. I'm getting the marketing out for that. And I'm working with our leadership above to make sure that everything is a coordinated effort really across the country and across all the different departments.
I went on mute because I didn't want my dog to interrupt. She sometimes does. It sounds like a really big job. What's kind of the most rewarding part of your job, or some things that really it's got to be challenging work, but at the end of the day, is there something that you do that you say, wow, this is making a difference, and I'm so glad that I made this career shift?
I love my job. Like, I am excited to go to work every day. Sometimes people think I'm crazy because every Monday, my whole team's in the office. Everyone comes in, and I'm excited to get up early Monday morning to go into the office and to see everyone. So I think the thing that's most meaningful to me in my day to day is being able to support my staff and being able to help them thrive, being able to help them grow in their roles and really accomplish everything that they want to do. I love being able to talk to someone about what it's going to take to get a promotion, to move up in the career, and what are the next steps looking like.
Yeah, I mean, that's not what you hear about in all job spaces. So it's exciting to hear that you're kind of creating that space where you give back to your employees and help them kind of grow. And the work is definitely challenging. So working in a positive environment is definitely, I'm sure, something that they treasure. So we have a lot of people here who are looking to make that shift and become frontline fundraisers, or looking for that next promotion. So what's the best career advice you ever got, and what's some career advice you could share?
I am really going to date myself with this because the best career advice I ever got was not from a person. I've received a lot of really good career advice from people, but it was just a simple sentence from a book. And back in 2013, when I was trying to make this career change, and I was really grappling with leaving a career that had been my passion and I had invested so much in, and trying to figure out how to get into this new thing and what was my fit. How did I belong there? I read this book that everyone was reading and was the talk of the town, which was Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In. If you remember, that came out that year and there was so much controversy around it. And I was like, well, I absolutely have to read this. But the one thing that really stood out to me was when she said, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And that is what made me apply to Columbia, because I knew. I was like, I would go back to school. I would leave, I would go back to school, and I would just go, full head on into this new career. And that was a scary thing to do because I didn't have much of a support network at that time. But that one thing really made me jump into what would become my new passion. And I think really my purpose in my career was found through taking that leap of faith. Career advice from me to people who are looking, I think very similarly, like find something that you really care about. Like that night when I was at the Met and they were raising money to buy a statue, I think art is super important. It's cultural, it matters so much, but to me, I really care about human services. I really want to help people who are struggling. And I think that matters when every day when I get to help those people, when I get to hear those direct stories and are able to help them make a change. I think that's really critical. And that's what I look for too when I'm hiring, that people whose goals align with our mission.
Yeah. Are there any other skills or things that you're really looking for when you're hiring?
Absolutely. In addition to just a strong educational background, like someone who's graduated from this program, because then I know that, they're going to have the skills necessary when I say, I need you to write a report on this, I need a grant. They're going to know how to do that. I also kind of look for, the dedication and the passion to get the job done. And someone who's going to be a team player. I think in our field, especially when we're interacting with donors directly, and that those relationships matter so much. Relationships are not as big of a part of everyone's job as it is in fundraising. Like I need somebody who is going to be interesting to have lunch with, someone who's going to be friendly and is going to be a good conversationalist, and who's going to be collaborative with my team.
Yeah. Oh, you said the keyword collaborative, because sometimes students say, oh, why do we have to do group projects? It's so hard to work with other people. Is that really, I mean, we tell students and we say, this is real life. How important is teamwork and collaboration for you at the Salvation Army? You mentioned kind of this cross collaboration that you're doing right now to prepare for how government shutdown will affect. How do talk a little bit about that kind of collaboration and how that plays out.
Absolutely everything we do is collaborative work. Like no one on my team operates in a vacuum. Just from getting a donor makes a $10 donation. The number of hands that have to see that, like someone has to process that gift, and maybe not for a $10 donation, but for a bigger donation, the gift processor has to work with a major gift officer who has to work with an assistant. And, there's just so many people. And at higher levels, I have colleagues in our social services department, in our shelters, in our churches, and the pastors who I have to always change hats and engage with in different ways and be able to work together for a common cause.
Yeah.
So
No,
everything's a group project.
that's exciting. I know you mentioned that, I think it was yesterday or earlier this week, you were running a training session for pastors on building a board. Can you talk a little bit about the relationship between boards and fundraising and kind of how that plays out? Because not everyone has served on a board, or they might not be at that level yet, or they might be trying to build a board for their organization. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I mean, boards are critical for fundraising. And if you haven't served on a board and you're in this field, I would highly recommend that you do and you find one. When I was entering this field, I joined a junior board, just a young professionals group, and that gave me exposure to the board of directors, which I eventually joined when I aged out. But that's so important, I think, getting that experience as a fundraiser. But back to boards and fundraising, the boards are your advocates in the community. They are the ones who have the relationships, your board members. They're the ones who know the other donors, and they're who can ask for money, because they're your biggest donors often. So you have to have someone who's made a similar sized gift to solicit another large gift, to have someone join and come along with us in supporting the mission. And so my board and I are in touch every single day. With I need anything I need. I have a reporter on the board. I call her. I'm like, hey, this thing is happening. Like, how should I react to this? What should we be doing? Or just other donors. I need someone to thank for a gift. It's obviously the chair of the board who's going to be writing that handwritten note saying, thank you so much. Can we have a meeting? So I think without them, you're really going to be struggling to bring in large donations.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a challenging time, especially for organizations that are serving, vulnerable populations like the Salvation Army is doing. How are you shifting what you're doing? Do you have a different strategy now for your development? I mean, clearly you just spoke about how you're trying to gear up and kind of anticipating what might happen if the government shutdown continues. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think the just overall in fundraising, our money raised is coming from a smaller and smaller group of people. I think that's the trend. It's been the trend for many years. So it's really just a small handful of donors who are bringing in the most money, the most revenue for the organization. So we are really doubling down on our relational fundraising efforts. We didn't have a giving society in the past. We're launching one right now. We're in the midst of launching a giving society. So those small donor cultivation events, having board members hosting in their homes, different people, is so important. So I can get those top 10 donors around a table for dinner and share about the mission. And many of them are going to be brand new to us. So we are really focusing in on those who we know are going to be weathering the storm okay, through whatever recession might happen or whatever's going on, while we're still continuing to kind of build through mid-level giving and build up that base of donors who remain critical, even if they're not giving $1 million gift.
Yeah, I mean, that's great insight. And it kind of touches on something else that you mentioned that I wanted to ask a follow-up question. One of the courses we have in the program is communications, marketing and communications. And it's Dr. Smikle developed it and teaches it, and it helps people figure out how to tell the story. How closely do you work with your marketing and communications team, and what are some tips you can share there?
Yeah, they report to me. So they are my team. I actually really love that part of my job. I took a communications class at Columbia, and that was really my only exposure before this. And then suddenly I'm leading the marketing efforts for the Salvation Army in the New York region. And it has surprisingly become one of my favorite parts of the day. I mean, everything from our social media manager literally running around the halls dressed as our mascot, filming TikToks, to strategizing over digital media spends and everything that we're going to do there. So I work very, very closely with them and make sure that our mass marketing messaging aligns with the same messaging that we're giving to our major donors. And so I've made sure that our teams collaborate and that the fundraisers are talking to the marketers and we're sharing assets and making sure that we're all telling the same story.
Yeah. I when I did some background research, I saw some headlines where you were in front of a bell ringer. And when people think of the Salvation Army, that's very often what they think of. And I know there was a story that wasn't that wasn't so long ago where there was a surprise gift that someone dumped into one of the buckets. Can you tell a little bit about that?
Yeah, I got a full page spread in the New York Post for that
Yes.
one. That was really fun. Yeah, so the giant red kettle. So everybody knows our kettles that we put out on the sidewalks. It's really iconic Christmas tradition in New York City. And they raise money for our year-round services. When you put $1 in one of those kettles, it is going to be, a meal for someone in our soup kitchen. It's pretty direct. Every single dollar, it stays in the community. But that giant kettle came about in 2020 when I was still at CCS and acting as a consultant for the Salvation Army. And in true CCS fashion, I went above and beyond for my client. Because that year, due to social distancing, we weren't allowed to put kettles on the sidewalks. And our CEO was like, what are we going to do? And I was like, well, I think I have some friends who could build us a really big kettle. And he was like, do it. So I used my personal networks and we built a 32-foot tall red kettle, and we got it permitted in Times Square. And that morning was Giving Tuesday morning that it was unveiled. We had Good Morning America there. We had CBS This Morning. We had probably 20 different local news camera crews, newspapers there, all to see this 32-foot tall kettle. And it lit up, it sparkled, it played music, all kinds of things. It was really fun, and it was something different and a little bit of joy during our COVID Christmas that we had that year. And yeah, then it went on tour around the city. We tore it down and rebuilt it in different neighborhoods for the whole month. And someone dropped a huge check in it one day. And so we did launch, and that was part of our marketing efforts, a search to find the donor. And we never did. But, this anonymous donation, just once again, it was fun and it was exciting. And it really brought to life the story of the need of New Yorkers at that time and how people were struggling. And, the Salvation Army was there to support them.
Yeah, we had a question come in the Q&A box. The question is from one of our amazing alums, and they wanted to know, the question is, the Salvationers Army is a church community. Did you have to learn and attend church services or activities to build the relationships with your stakeholders?
No, I would say not. We have a very diverse staff. People on my team come from a wide variety of backgrounds and religions. It is the church, Salvation Army is a Christian church. It's a Protestant church. And their specific brand of Christianity is that they believe that their calling in life is to serve the poor. And so all of our community centers, which we have 19 of just in the city, function as dually as a church and as that community center, as I said. And so I interact with the pastors a lot, but there's no expectation on us. Since we were founded in the 1860s, the basis of which we were founded on was anti-discrimination. And, when the pastor who founded us did it, it was because people of different ethnicities and social statuses were not able to worship together. And he did not like that. He thought everyone should, be able to worship. And so he founded this new church where no matter where you were from, if you were homeless, you hadn't been able to shower, you needed food first, you were able to go there. And I mean, even so much so, this is just interesting. He was one of the first people to ever ordain women because he believed so strongly in the equality of the sexes. So in the 1860s, he was ordaining women so they could go out and preach.
Yeah, and at that time, women didn't have the right to vote in every state. So that's a big deal.
Yep. So no, there's no expectation among our clients or staff or anyone that you would follow the religion. All of our services are open to anyone, as are our jobs.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for answering that one. And then another question that came through is, if you're looking at a resume, is there something specific that makes one resume stand out over another? Is there some sort of skill that someone can highlight on a piece of paper, or how can people stand out when you're culling through resumes?
Yeah. I am currently hiring for a few different positions. So
Oh
I've been,
yes, and you
I can tell you
must.
about this later, but I've been looking at a
Yes,
lot
you
of
must speak to
resumes.
that.
Been doing a lot, looking at a lot of resumes, hundreds, and doing a lot of interviews just recently. And I think when I look at a resume, um, if the if your experience doesn't align with the job, I'm going to have absolutely no idea why you're applying to my role as a fundraiser. So either having that on there, like some idea, some progression, like, oh, I worked in a development office, or I volunteered here, or a blurb saying why you're interested. People don't submit cover letters anymore. That since I last applied for a job, that seems to have not become a thing anymore. But saying why you're interested in this job, giving me some indication, if it was just like a few sentences at the top of the resume. And then I think, especially once you do get that interview and once people reach me, they've already gone through like a phone screening and they're in the office and they're talking to me. Having done some research on who we are and what we do, one of the questions that I always ask is, what can you tell me about our mission? And more often than not, people will say, well, I know that you do good things. I'm like, that's it? That's not our mission statement. I mean, we do good things. But, having been prepared and done your research and known the mission statement and exactly what we do, I think really makes people stand out in the interview. Because if you can't do that before coming to an interview for a job, how much of that work are you going to do before I put you in front of a donor for a visit? That really shows me how prepared you're going to be every day at work.
Yeah, and I think that's a great idea to put a blurb up at the top, kind of explaining. And I think one thing that we've been telling people to do, and let me know if you think, if you're seeing this too, is that it should be customized to the job you're applying to. And that if you don't have a ton of experience, but you are a student at Columbia or you just graduated from there, kind of listing some relevant coursework that might serve you in the job might be a way to kind of make up for no frontline fundraising experience, showing that you've taken a class in planned giving or major gifts or fundraising or budgeting or any of those things.
Yeah. I mean, one of the roles I'm hiring for right now, I'm not requiring experience. It's entry level. So I'm seeing a lot of those resumes, and some, errors that I'm seeing in applications is, people have a generic resume when they submit through LinkedIn, which is okay, but they'll have the title of their resume that's available to me be like their name, and it'll be like resume for another organization with last year's date on it, or it doesn't say their name at all. So when I download them, I'm like, whose resume was this?
Yeah.
And it's just little things like that pet peeves.
Yeah, simple things. So we got a great question to come into the Q&A box. So the person wrote that they understand that relationships are key to fundraising, but besides being on the board, how do you approach someone? And they're saying, in a cold calling approach, do you have a script that's worked for you? Do you prefer a specific platform like LinkedIn, for example? Or are there other helpful directories that, other than Idealist or Candid, especially free ones for small nonprofits that are starting off?
So to cold call potential donors.
Do you have a script? I mean, I do want to share that if you're in New York City, oh, sorry, the dog's making her appearance. You do have a lot of, if you're a Columbia student, you have access to a ton of databases. But if you're a New York City resident, the New York City Public Library also gives you access to free access to databases. So check that out. But do you have a script or another way that you can advise people on how to get started?
as a fundraiser, if you're trying to find donors, no, we don't cold call at all. And maybe we're very lucky because we have a base of donors, of people who know us and, maybe received help from us decades ago. Their grandparents received help from us. I hear that story a lot, actually. That, my grandpa, said that you helped him during the war is a very common reason why people say they donate. So we don't do cold calling, but we do prospecting and look for new donors, acquisition, and we do that through direct mail, which is a very expensive way to find new donors, through the trading of lists, and then also through digital advertising. So we do spend on digital advertising on like social media, and more organic content and stuff that we post on different websites that align with it. We'll put, ads on Bible Gateway that, say, hey, we're out here serving, you want to make a donation. And we do get new donors in that way as well. But a lot of it, again, is through making connections to people.
Yeah. So a lot of it you rely on. Do you rely on volunteers too to kind of make those organic connections? Are you out there telling your volunteers like, we need your help? I mean, clearly one of your biggest ways that you're prospecting small donors are your Red Kettle campaigns.
Mm-hmm. But we don't have donor information through those because people are
Right.
putting cash in those kettles.
But do you feel like building that brand awareness is part of the prospecting cycle for you?
Absolutely. People see kettles and they know us. They know us often as like the Christmas organization. So I think that's really important. It's part of who we are, even though it's not necessarily a huge part of our fundraising. We do have a huge volunteer base, though. All of our community centers are really kind of bare bones staffed, and there's volunteers that are cooking food and serving food. So through those community connections that our pastors are able to make and the community centers are able to make through what they're doing every day, we meet a lot of new people and we're able to bring people in.
That's so insightful. We've got a great question here, which is what fundraisers are always asked, and it's always kind of the big challenge. When raising funds, how do you turn a hard, cold no into an enthusiastic yes? Or is there any advice that you can share with people? Because in a frontline fundraising role, you're going to face rejection.
Yeah, we are pleasantly persistent. We do get no's. People say, not this year, or that's just not what I'm interested in. And we will continue to steward them with their permission. We will continue to send them materials, ask their assistant like, hey, maybe this year, are they interested in meeting with us this year, and see if we can get any other connections. And I go through, I give my board lists of names. These are the people they've donated in the past. Do you know them? Could you talk to them? And just we keep people informed, and oftentimes their situational change, the world changes. When someone was giving to something before and now suddenly everyone needs food, people might say, actually, I just heard from them and they're helping people with food. So, priorities change.
So it kind of ties into your storytelling.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So maybe someone who was a no, you get to go back with and say, hey, there are new needs here now. So
yeah, I mean, if you know your donors and know what their interests are and keep them informed.
Yeah. We have another question that came in through the chat, and it's someone who's connecting with your story. They're applying to the program because they're passionate about supporting mental health field through nonprofit work. And they ask, from your experience moving from therapy into fundraising, how do you see the climate and viability of funding for mental health nonprofits evolving, especially in your role?
Yeah. So right now I'm not necessarily in mental health funding. We do have mental health services, but I'm funding a huge breadth of services. So I don't think I could necessarily say about mental health specifically, but we do know that overall for human services, the share of funding going to human services is gradually increasing year over year. So that's continuing to creep up as people see that more and more as a priority. So I think the outlook is good overall for all of these services that we're providing.
Yeah. And you're kind of making that case, and unfortunately the need's not going away, but the funding is shifting and changing. So yeah, that's wonderful points. And I know we usually typically try to end at 12:45, but I did want to give an opportunity for you to kind of share about the roles that you're hiring for, because I know we have job seekers here. Oh, we do have another question that came in, so.
Okay.
But if you want to talk about your the jobs you're hiring for now, that would be great.
Yeah. I'm hiring for 2 positions right now. One is an entry-level fundraiser. They'd be working with mid-level donors. That's like $500 to $5,000. Be like a large portfolio, and I'm looking for someone who's really green. I guess I want to give the opportunity for someone to come in and get their first, fundraising job and train them so that they can, eventually move up and be trained into a major gifts role. So that is open, and we are actively interviewing for that. And then I'm also hiring for a more experienced individual to join us as our advisory board relations manager. And so they would be managing our board, as well as all of our little community boards that each community senator has. They have their own advisory groups in every community. So be someone engaging every single day with our biggest donors, our biggest advisors, and being strategic about helping them grow and develop. And then we also have an internship program for anyone who's interested in something a little less formal, not ready to do full time yet. We do have an internship program, and we have a few interns in the department already. So that is also a possibility and something that we can kind of build together to fit someone's interests and needs.
Yeah. Oh, well, excellent. And oh, my dog's saying hello. So another question that came in was about collaboration, and how does philanthropy and fundraising work intersect with other departments or roles within the Salvation Army? Do you collaborate closely with other program staff?
Absolutely. We couldn't do anything that we do without them. If you just take the example of a grant, I need to know what your needs are out in the field. We work very, very closely with the field staff to draft grants, and then we get the funding. We monitor the grant funding. We do that in my department, and then in the end, we have to do reporting. So we're there every step of the way. And that goes for all of our institutional giving as well as for major donors. The larger the gift, the more likely it is to be restricted to a particular program. I just got one a few days ago from someone who wants to support all of the families in our family shelters. And so they want to make sure they can buy them winter coats, new change of clothes, and toys for all of the kids in our shelters. This is probably 800 people. And so I'm working directly with the shelter directors to get, a listing and sizes of all of their people so we can put together a quote. I'm literally out there sourcing coats. I have a coat supplier, sourcing coats, and my intern is buying Christmas toys so I can get that to the donor. Because whatever it costs is what they're going to give, which is amazing. Like, these are the most generous people, and this is not always what you get when someone wants to make a gift, but
that's
critical.
Exciting. So someone who's applying to the program, which I urge you to apply, and I'll share my contact information. I'll put it in the chat. So connect with me, and we'll put you in touch with everyone about applying. But their question is, They say they're inspired by your story, especially how you successfully pivoted to a different field. They'd love to hear how you stayed motivated and kept pushing forward despite any rejections or challenges you faced during the transition.
I experienced a lot of rejection. Um, not all, just some silent. I just didn't get callbacks. I probably submitted 100 resumes, having absolutely no idea, honestly, what I was applying for. It was major gift officer. I was not qualified to be a major gift officer. And then I did get one interview before that, and I definitely was rejected from that one too. But I knew that I wanted to make a change, and I knew that what was most important to me was to make an influence and an impact in the lives of my clients. And I knew that I could no longer do that as kind of a cog in the wheel in a broken system. And I saw this as a way to really help my clients. And I was determined. I can't tell you, I just kept pushing through. So I do it. Do it. My message to you is to do it. It is really, really hard, but finding the job that you're passionate about and that you're excited to go to every day is everything. So
yeah, that's motivating. And then someone here is hoping that you can share some details on what the internship at your organization might entail.
Yeah. I said I have a few interns in my department already. 2 are in the marketing team, and then 1 is with our grants, institutional giving team. But we have obviously a wide variety of options for people. So we could accommodate someone coming in and helping with grants, working with the major gifts team, the planned giving team, the social media team, all of that. And I could kind of tailor it to the specific interest of somebody.
So would you say that an internship might be a great way for someone to kind of get some real experience in one of those areas that they might not have?
Yeah. If
Like an
you're
internship is good if, hey, I don't have any planned giving experience, but I want to, would that be a good way to get that as an internship?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, even just being in a development office is going to give you a basis for understanding what future jobs you're applying for.
Right.
You really need to see it and be there to understand what it's going to be like down the road when you're applying for jobs. And I think an internship is a wonderful way to get that experience and insight.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I can't thank you enough. Deanna, thank you for being here and keeping us all connected and engaged. And I just want to, Basil, I think you're still here on the call. I just wanted to, Andy's going to share all of our contacts. And then, Baz, if you had any parting thoughts, I just wanted to throw it back to you. I think he's not able to join us. Deanna, is there anything else that you wanted to add as we're kind of wrapping things up?
Yeah, I'll just add that I met one of Rebecca's, someone on her team this past weekend, and she said how much she loved working for Rebecca. She'd worked for her for 3 years, and and she also loved going to work every day. So that's all I'm really going to add, and I'll just give her a little round. She did such a awesome job answering all the questions, which I knew she would.
Thank you, Deanna.
No, and I'm going to echo Deanna there because I really appreciate your candor, because some of these questions are things that people want to ask but don't always have the opportunity to ask. And hearing from you and kind of understanding your motivations and how you stay positive, and it's definitely challenging, but you still kind of have this energy that is contagious. So I really thank you for your time. And I just want to hand it back to you to see if you have any other kind of closing thoughts.
Thank you so
and
much.
and the best way that people should contact you, because I know you're going to get a flurry of interest. Should they reach out to you via LinkedIn?
Either LinkedIn, or if my email address is up on your slide, I'm not sure.
It's not, but I can share it if you're good with that.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. So I'm happy to connect with any student and talk about how I can help you. But thank you so much, Lonnie and Deanna, for inviting me to be here. It was great to be able to share.
I'm just making sure I typed this correctly. So I've put it in the chat. And Rebecca, can you see it? Did I do it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's it.
All right, great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us here today. And once again, it's always a pleasure having alum come back and tell us about what they're doing. And thank you for also serving as mentors for students and other people in the field and potential hirers.
Thank you.
So thanks to everyone for joining us today.